Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining the South African Chamber. We are based in the UK, but we are very much a global organization. And we have with us today people from all over the continents. So thank you very much for sharing time with us. I am Sharon Constanson. I am chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce in the UK. And we spend our time focusing on what we can do to improve the lives of South Africans. What can we do for the country, and how can we mobilize efforts in more ways than is currently happening? So where can we find some energy? Today, we are giving one of ours in the series of SA Entrepreneurs. In other words, how do SA entrepreneurs just actually get on with it and get the job done, and actually are very successful in generating employment, which we all know is the way to grow the economy. The South African economy doesn't have space in terms of current jobs within a greater, more macro infrastructure environment. But at the operations level, creating business, creating entrepreneurs, creating jobs for fellow colleagues, improving the communities are the way in which South Africa is going to grow the economy and improve the lives of the people who live within that economy, and actually create a sound base to the economy longer term sustainable growth for South Africa. But it's going to take the private sector to proactively engage in this environment. It's not something that's going to miraculously happen. And we're going to showcase today 4 entrepreneurs who've actually just gone and done it. I'm so proud of them. I'm actually humbled in their presence when I listen to some of their stories and the things they've done, the adversities they've had to face, the challenges that they are currently facing. And each one of them is going to share with you what they've done, why they've done it, where they're going. And then we're going to have an in-conversation session with each of the panelists. I'm going to take our panelists in the following order. I'm going to speak to Portia first, then with Erin, then Thendo, and then with Kerryne. I have to split up those 2 names that are so similar. So I'm looking forward to spending some time. Please ask questions. It's the one way in which we can help engage further. So without further ado, I would like to ask Portia to unmute yourself, please, Portia. Could you just give us a few minutes? Oh, no, sorry, before you do that, I've got something I need to say first for one moment. Portia is actually an engineer by trade, and she, after about 10 years in the manufacturing industry, she decided it was time to do something a little bit more entrepreneurial and to make a difference in her community. So she started a cleaning and hygiene business, and one wonders why? Why that? Why is that where she has focused her life? I came across Portia when she was involved with another women's event, and I was so heavily impressed with what she has achieved. So Portia, would you like to just share with us first how you got to where you are today?
Okay, thank you, Sharon, and thank you for inviting me to this exciting event. My name is Portia. I am the managing director of Mrknee, which is a cleaning and hygiene business that I started 9 years ago. That's 2013. Prior to going into business full-time, I worked for approximately 10 years as an engineer and also held other managerial positions in the manufacturing industry. So during my time, while I was in the corporate world, I struggled with a lot of issues, especially to fit within the industry. Some of them had to do with lack of identity because I grew up without a father. So I struggled with low self-esteem and timidity, which was a hindrance when it comes to growing in my career in the corporate world. I also had other internal issues. For example, I also struggled to fit in a man's world. The manufacturing industry is mainly highly dominated. So during that time, I got a mentor who helped me with those issues. So when I started overcoming them one by one, I began to have a desire to help someone else instead of just going up the corporate ladder. That's when I got exposed to contract cleaners. And I began to realize that this is a marginalized industry. Most of the cleaners are highly illiterate. Some of them are in the cleaning industry because they do not have any means to further their education. So I wanted to transfer the lessons learned, especially in terms of personal development, decision-making, vision board, and all of that. I wanted to transfer those lessons to this industry. So I made a decision that I wanted to start a cleaning and hygiene business, which is not just profitable and sustainable, but a business that would empower cleaners and general workers beyond the cleaning industry so that they do not spend the rest of their lives as cleaners. And we have realized over the years that when you do that, you begin to uplift the morale of the general workers or cleaners, and it results to high service levels for our clients. When I talk about empowerment or empowering them, I'm basically referring to something which is more than just training and development. This has to do with career guidance programs, personal development, skills programs, something which encompasses the holistic approach when it comes to empowering a person so that it can move them from just being a cleaner to something else which will propel them to another level in life, especially in terms of their careers.
Thank you, Portia. It's absolutely fascinating to see how somebody has, through their own hardships, seen the value that they can bring to other people, but through education have actually made such a difference to so many people's lives. Not only that, you should actually deliver a service to people who don't have to go and do those things for themselves. So not only are you helping the internal stakeholder, you're helping the external stakeholder, which is the customer as well. You've left the corporate world. You told us about climbing the ladder and feeling that that wasn't going to give you the fulfillment that you were looking for. Just give me some idea of what kind of fulfillment are you getting today, having made that decision not to climb the ladder and to go into an entrepreneurial environment?
It's been a very fulfilling journey. The first 3 years, I must admit, was very, very tough and intense because it's not what I expected. I thought it would be easy. But the first 3 years, mainly because I was not entrepreneurial. I had not been exposed to a business world or to entrepreneurship before. So I struggled immensely in the first 3 years. We only started breaking through into the market in the 4th year. And then that's when I began to understand or to have a flow of whether I really like this thing or not. At this point in time, I would say I get fulfilled firstly when seeing a difference, the fact that we're making a difference in our employees, the cleaners. Some of them who have been cleaners, you find that they have moved to different professions because they have been empowered within the business, but also there's a lot of, since the unemployment rate in South Africa is very high, we employ a large number of people in the cleaning industry. So the fact that we are, not only are we moving people from just being cleaners to a new profession, but the fact that we employ a high number of people, giving people a chance just to be employed as a start in life is really fulfilling. So I would say that it really it fulfills me to see that there is a difference that we're making in the community that we live in, over and above the fact that the business has to be sustainable and profitable.
Profitable is what we all aim for. Profitable is not always what we achieve in the early stages and every month through the cycle of a business. So from your perspective, if you're looking at the financial sustainability journey that you have been through, how has that panned out for you? Have you gone for funding? Have you had family? What sort of solutions have you brought to those early days, current days, potential difficulty in funding?
It's been a difficult period, I must admit, but I learned something. Usually what you find out is that when entrepreneurs are starting out, they usually think that the problem is funding. Mm-hmm. And then at an early phase in business, I started being part of a number of enterprise and supply development programs, which were teaching me more about business. So I began to understand the importance of making sure that we have access to market, meaning that as a business, my responsibility, or as an entrepreneur, my responsibility is to make sure that my business generates sales. In other words, the model has to work. If we have customers and the working model, then the funders will definitely be able to fund that business because there's customers that are coming in, sales are increasing, which means that there will be profitability. So our focus over the years has been generating a lot of sales, not a lot, a significant amount of sales, and also what happens is that I worked hard as an entrepreneur to a point where we have been winning a lot of competitions. So through these competitions, some of these competitions had prizes attached to them. So 2 years ago, we won a funding of 1.5 million rands, and that is now going to help us with the new big project that we'll be working on in the upcoming 2 months. So I would say that while we were struggling to get funding, especially from the banks, I made sure that we are working hard to be recognized in the market in terms of winning awards, winning competitions. And therefore, through that, we started accumulating some of the funding that would be required at this phase of our business where we are at the moment, which is the growth stage. So that's how we have managed as a business. So in a nutshell, it has been mainly about increasing our sales, winning awards, and through those awards, we started getting some funding, which will help us in the growth phase.
Fantastic. There are always difficult times. There are times you sit down when you get home and you've had a day from hell and people have not been getting on with each other. Something went wrong with a customer. Funding didn't appear as you expected. The bank phoned you with a horrible phone call. Whatever those moments happen in all us entrepreneurs' lives, what keeps you going that day when you get home so that the next morning the entrepreneur Portio has absolutely bounced back?
Okay, what has helped me, I love nature. So especially during tough times, sometimes I go to the beach. That helps me a lot. I like hiking. That also helps to rejuvenate me, to help me calm down and come up with new solutions. And also I make sure that I surround myself with people that are positive. Positive people, optimistic people that will speak life to my vision. I learned very early that people who are complaining and all of that will basically, they drown the vision. So I have a strong moral support in terms of people that are around me. My close circle is people that are very supportive. So that has helped me. So over and above hiking and going to the beach and being close to nature, that's what has helped me in this journey.
Positive energies are so critical. We can't underestimate them. How did you break into the industry? How did you actually break through into a concept to a reality?
That was a difficult one. Just like I highlighted, first 3 years was very tough. Why was it tough? It was tough mainly because, number one, I was very technical. I was coming from a technical background of being an engineer. I had never been exposed to entrepreneurship at that time. So I didn't understand the dynamics of the industry in terms of understanding how do you reach out to customers, how do you sell, and all of that. So being part of the program, an entrepreneurial program, helped me a lot with that. So while I was refining those skills, that's when I got to understand how to acquaint myself with potential clients, identifying our target market. So ultimately, through building a relationship or several relationships with people in the manufacturing sector, especially the clients that, the companies that I had worked for before, I began to learn how to sell to them, how to pitch correctly, because previously I was not pitching correctly. I thought I was an employee, so there was a misunderstanding of how a salesperson pitches or presents themselves compared to a person who's going to an interview. So during those 3 years, I built a lot of confidence. I learned how to speak and present our concept accurately to the right target market. That's when one of my ex-managers, who was the director of one of the companies, gave me an opportunity to start in one of their factories. And then the rest is history.
It goes to show it's who we know. How do we tap into our network? How do we use those people who can support us? And I think that's a trick we know in every aspect of life, whether it is finding a job, finding a board position, finding a new customer, finding a new idea, a new creativity. We really have to work in with the brains of our colleagues and friends that we share the passion with. Portio, absolutely fantastic. And to all of you who are putting up questions, thank you. That was extremely helpful. And you have got some messages from people saying, keep going. Keep up the strength. So please, can we continue the questions, preferably in the Q&A if you can, and messages to the panel in terms of support, and otherwise in the chat box with pleasure. Otherwise, I may not see the question as clearly. So I'd like to now turn to Eiren Drake. Eiren has an interesting background. As a young man, influenced quite strongly by his grandfather, decided to start a canning business in Zanin. And because he'd spent his time growing up in that space, in amongst the local community, had found a love and a passion for one of the more traditional foods of chicken feet and necks, which some of us will think, pardon, and other ones will say, absolutely. They now sell and show us the can, a 400-gram can that is sold through ShopRite as a product that is now available in the marketplace. And as Eiren says, it's still one of his favorite foods. So Eiren, do you want to share a little bit of your journey first, and then we'll have a conversation?
Sharon, it's an absolute honor to be speaking to you today, and I thank you for that. Tin Stuff was founded by myself, Erin Drake, together with my late grandfather Spencer in September 2017. Construction of our manufacturing plant commenced shortly thereafter, whereby 90% of our machinery and equipment was self-designed, engineered, and commissioned. In a leap of faith and with plenty of trial and error, we managed to attain the approval of our product and our process by the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications. And we completed the construction of a 100% owner-funded processing plant by the end of 2019. In early 2020, Tin Stuff officially commenced production of our flagship product line, which is obviously the 400-gram canned chicken feet and necks. It's a concept that was largely inspired by our family's humble background, having grown up on a small timber farm near Zanin in Limpopo. As a young boy, I spent a significant amount of time with my late grandfather's employees, whose children were my friends and my playmates at the time. It was then that I was first introduced to the widely loved and consumed dish of chicken feet, which very quickly became one of my favorite meals, and actually still is today. As a young man, I gained a deep understanding of the local culture and moreover an insight into the simple eating habits of our farm people. I was intrigued by the preparation methods of these delicious meals, and later I came to understand the buying patterns involved in the staple diets of the people in Limpopo. The difficulties these people faced regarding access to affordable, good quality protein, and the lengths to which they were forced to go every day in order to simply obtain dinner for their families, created an innate awareness within me. Understanding their struggle with basic amenities, commuting to and from limited points of access to food, and in particular fresh meat supplies, followed by further time spent to prepare their food, ignited in me a need to dedicate my adult life to contributing towards finding a solution to this problem, which I now see as a far more serious pandemic than any virus. In a nutshell, Tin Stuff was established to address the gap in the market around access to sustainable protein and to become an FMCG manufacturer that actually aligns with the tastes, the needs, and the aspirations of its market.
Thank you, Eiren. It's absolutely fascinating. And when I had a chat with Eiren, I think it was last week, chatting about the influence his grandfather had had on his life, just share with us, unfortunately, your grandfather is no longer with you. Can you just share with us what that did to you as a person and to you as the business and to where the business has gone in spite of that loss that you've had to suffer?
It was one of the most difficult challenges for me to face in my personal life, having lost the main capital investor, my mentor, both as an individual as well as a business person, was certainly a major challenge for us. And to be honest, I was left. I was at my wit's end shortly after the passing of my grandfather in November 2020. And I lacked direction in terms of where to take this business, what the next steps should be. Luckily, I was fortunate enough to be the recipient of what I believe to be a true blessing from above, when I was directly approached by the head buyers for this category of ShopRite checkers. And they expressed an interest in listing our product for the exclusive supply to the ShopRite group. And this was an absolute godsend, and it ultimately gave us access to an enormous consumer market, and the opportunity to be able to grow our business. So yes, certainly very grateful to have had ShopRite step in after the loss of my mentor. They've been absolutely phenomenal in terms of the guidance and support that they've had to offer to date. It has been a lengthy process getting our products listed with them. There's a lot of requirements listing with a big corporate retailer like ShopRite, and yeah, I'm just very, very grateful to have had their support shortly after the loss of my grandfather. I think it certainly gave me direction and hope in terms of launching this very unique product to market.
Erin, you talked about having quite bespoke technology, machinery, manufacturing. Please just tell us a little bit more about why is that bespoke? What is different about it? What did you have to address to ensure that you were compliant with all the food hygiene requirements as well?
So ultimately, chicken feet were regarded as inedible offal. At the time that we initially started putting together our production facility, so we had to prove our product, our process, our production process, and our product concept at the end of the day. And this entailed custom designing a lot of our machinery in order to comply with the regulations. And it was certainly a challenge. I was very blessed to have an extremely innovative grandfather who was very technically minded. And one of his strong points was certainly to do with mechanical engineering. And he was able to design and put together a production process that is a unique one. And that ultimately resulted in us getting the approval from the NRCS to finally produce our product, and we facilitated the national compulsory regulations, making space for offal to be canned in South Africa in their revised version of the ComSpec that was launched in 2020. They finally made room for canned meat, canned offal products in the meat compulsory spec. So yeah, certainly a lot of trial and error, and yeah, we're very grateful to have opened this new gap in the market up in terms of the canned food category.
Fantastic. Now I'm going to really ask a really blunt question, but I have to ask it because I am ignorant. What does it taste like?
It tastes very similar to the way that it is prepared in general in South Africa. There are two versions usually that one would find in our country. One is the Shisanyama version, which is bride on open coals, and it usually comes in the form of a single chicken foot. The other is when people prepare it with sort of in a stew, add some vegetables and some spices to it, and that is pretty much what our product tastes like. It's ready to heat and eat. Open the can up into a bowl, warm it up, and if you've got a nice steaming pot of pap or some rice, even samp, it goes really wonderfully. So to answer your question, in terms of the taste, it's difficult to explain to you how chicken feet and necks taste if you've never tasted them before, but for somebody that has, it is like your normal stewed chicken feet and necks that a lot of people prepare in our country.
Mm-hmm. Which is absolutely fantastic, and it's interesting that we're bringing those kind of foods, and I know from my time living in South Africa how much we did eat of foods that I wasn't brought up in an English family eating. So I'm already on that journey, but this one is going to be a new one, and I'm going to be in South Africa next week, and hopefully we will have an occasion that I can at least taste it. The other thing you told me, which is actually quite interesting, is because of the electricity issues in South Africa, because of the demographics of some of our population, the inability to store fresh food or have access to fresh food. So this solves another one of the problems. Is it's got a shelf life of 2 years, I think you were saying, if I remember correctly. And therefore, it's only the heating, which once again, you can go and have it I've had somebody say, please, I must make sure I eat it with pup. So yes, I promise I will. Not used to pup, but I'll work on it. Thank you very much. Erin, just one last quick sentence from you. What is your vision? Where do you see the company going now?
I'd certainly like to expand our reach within this new canned food category that we've managed to open up, and definitely we do have several similar products that also obviously utilize the affordable, highly nutritious offal products that are widely available and already so widely consumed in our country. The vision would be to expand our reach within this category and bring more affordable, highly nutritious protein products to a market that is desperately in need of them.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for that. And I just look at your vision, and one of the things is amazing is how you ended up with, as you say, a fortuitous moment where you found ShopRite. What I'd love you to share with us in a year's time is who else you've got that you are then selling through in the retail industry. I am hoping that we will end up with some discussion with the South African shops in the UK, because I know there is a massive population here who would really appreciate the delicacies that you provide for us. I'd like to now move to Thendo. Thendo, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thendo, you are based still here in the UK?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Thendo's based in the UK. Got chatting to her the other day. What a fascinating lady. She's known as Mrs. T, and she is the creator and financial coach at a company called Money Sense. She has a belief around financial wellness, and that it is a person's dignity to be able to understand and be capable to make their own money decisions. So she starts with adults that are students, graduates, and at the younger stages of their lives, that they build that capability at a young age so that it is sound and takes them through their adult lives. Thendo, would you like to tell us a bit more about you? Mrs. T, would you like to tell us more about your business?
Yes, so I think thank you, first of all, Sharon, for this wonderful platform to share my story. So before I can even talk about Money Sense, I have to talk about the person behind Money Sense, because Money Sense is still very much a one-man show, if I can put it that way. So yeah, I'm Thendo, also passionately known rather as Miss T. I grew up in Limpopo province, Erin, actually in a small town called Musina, right by the Beitbridge border to Zimbabwe. Yeah, so I grew up, spent the first 18 years of my life there. Then at 18, moved to Johannesburg to pursue a career in chartered accountancy, which links very well to how Money Sense was actually birthed. I studied at Wits, did an accounting sciences degree there. Took a very long-ended route, but eventually got through the great halls and graduated, started working at EY, which is one of the big four global professional services firms in the world. Started serving my articles there as a chartered accountant trainee, spent about 5 years there. And in 2019, I qualified as a chartered accountant, and I decided to take two very bold moves. I moved to the US to start, to just get international experience, and I also got married. But when I arrived in the US, the plan was to actually start working or to get international experience in New York. That has always I don't even know why I chose New York, but that's just what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the concrete jungle, but I ended up in Silicon Valley. I ended up in San Francisco. And I think it also just pins well to the story of how Money Sense was created, because as we all know, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, it's the hub of all things startups. So I spent most of my time when I was still in San Francisco, attending a lot of MBA conferences, business school conferences, business school type conferences almost every weekend, just trying to build my skill set around building a business one day. But of course, this was something that I wanted to do like in the far future. I think most of us all have this wonderful idea that we are going to build businesses. So yeah, this was just me trying to add to my skill sets, but I didn't know that a year into that COVID was going to happen. I was in the US for an 18-month contract. A year into that, COVID happened, and the employer basically said, sorry, we can't keep you guys on the payroll anymore. And that, between you and me, Sharon, means retrenchment. So we were retrenched, and I was literally stuck. I was stuck, packed my bags, moved to the UK. This is where my husband is. This is where we live. And I knew that I was going to not have the opportunity to get formal employment in inverted commas, because in order for me to work in the UK, I needed a work permit, and I didn't have that. I was in the UK on a visitor's visa. I knew that a work permit was going to take me another year to get, because also it was COVID. It was just a big mess, right? So I knew that this whole year was going to be written off, right? So I thought, okay, I could choose to be depressed and feel sorry for myself, or I can choose to look inside, and this is where I also got a personal coach, look inside and try to map out my opportunities, try and map out what I can do with what I know, with what I have, right? And at the time, I had an academic background in finance, right? I'm a chartered accountant. I had financial coaching. I had attended financial coaching classes, as well as business classes, entrepreneurship classes, when I was still in San Francisco. And I thought, okay, how can I marry these two? Because I come from a home where my parents insist you need to make sure that in this life you leave an indelible mark in people's life. You want to add value in people's life. You want to make sure that you contribute positively to society. And I thought, okay, how can I now give back? Because I'm not in the receiving end. I can't get a job in inverted commas. How can I give back? And financial education was one of it, because it just came naturally with the skill sets that I already possessed. Yeah, so that is how basically Money Sense was birthed. Yeah, during adversity. Yeah.
And most of us are under pressure before these kind of things actually do deliver. So you chose your customer as the graduate and the student. How do you find you as a financial person is engaging with the vulnerability and the humanness and the education towards that internal customer that you have, that internal stakeholder, your customer?
Yeah, so the customer is, like you're saying, it's a student, and it's a young graduate, and usually in a coaching room. So the business is basically one-on-one coaching or master classes, which is more in a group setup. And then the easiest one to basically reach my content is digital content. I create digital content on either what is this called, YouTube or podcast, iTunes and Spotify, right? But in my coaching rooms, this is where I, as a coach, because I'm a trained financial coach, this is where we sit and have, one-on-one conversations around, let me understand your money classroom. Let me understand your beliefs about money, your personality about money, because, 20% of our financial or personal finance decisions have to do with the maths. So the mechanics, what I trained for at university and as a CA, but 80%, which is the majority of the work, has to do with behavior, which is where I fit in now with being a coach, a financial coach, trying to say, let's understand why at the point at which you graduate as a doctor, you decide to go and buy the biggest Mercedes-Benz or BMW, and you want to stay in the most lavish suburbs in South Africa, right? Let's understand what informs that decision. Let's understand, before we can even go go and say, let's take out, the bank statement and let's map out a budget for you, and this is your money plan, go and be great. Let's understand the psyche. Let's understand who has spoken into your personal finance psyche first. And that always helps us in terms of moving forward with, building resilient, young professionals who will make it not just financially, but holistically. Yeah.
It's actually fascinating. You really answered your question far more than I expected of you in terms of the coach, the human, and the trust that individual has to put with you, because a lot of financial planners, and I'm talking globally, I'm not talking about anywhere specifically or in any specific part, is how do you know that person is aligned to you and your particular needs as the customer? And how can you trust that individual to be doing the right thing for you, not just selling what they know, rather than selling to me as the individual? So I feel very humbled by the degree of the numbers and behavior that you put into one person, you, to solve the situation of your customer. Can you share with us what is the most, I'm going to use the word common, frequent issue that comes to rise? You talked about the ego needing the boost and standing up on the pedestal saying, look, I'm important, I'm educated. But what are the challenges that most youngsters face in their financial literacy and journey?
The biggest one is debt, Sharon. I read a statistic, I think, when I started the business, I obviously needed to do a lot of background around, is there actually a need? And I read a statistic with TransUnion. It was Q1 in 2020, and this was before the pandemic, right? And I think the statistic now is just horrible. And it was talking about how if someone in South Africa has 100 Rand, 73 Rand goes towards servicing debt. It goes towards personal loans, credit cards, the list is endless around the number of debt facilities that one gets exposure to. And usually when I have master classes, it's easy to teach in a group of people and people clap hands, but I think the most value is when I have these one-on-one conversations with clients, and I say, let's map out that debt landscape. Let's understand exactly who you owe and how much you owe. And it's shocking for most people. And that's my job, right? To raise your level of awareness to your financial landscape, to say, let's write down how much you think you owe and who you owe. And as people are writing down, they'll give me maybe, let's say, a list of 3, creditors that they believe they owe. And as we are starting to map out the exercise now, because I'm trained to read bank statements and numbers in color, right? You realize that
Read's not a good one.
you learn that this person literally came into the room thinking they had 3 creditors. They're sitting with 10, 11 lines of credit that they had no idea they had, and they had no idea how much that big number is at the end of the day, because a lot of us understand debt in the sense of, oh no, it's a debit order that goes off my bank statement at 200 Rand every other day. And that's not the case. You need to understand the entire debt landscape in order for you to understand actually how much trouble am I in, if it is trouble at all. So debt is a big one. People don't understand how much they owe. They don't understand who they owe. They just don't have a clear and a holistic view of how to get out of debt. And I think getting out of debt is probably the number one thing that we all need to do if we are going to start even building and thinking about investing and saving for the long term and even for emergencies. Yeah.
And I think you could teach a finance department, a treasury, a government. I think there are lots of people who I hope are listening to what you've just said now, because it actually is a global issue in many aspects of business and government, as well as individuals. And youngsters coming out of university in this country as well are also saddled with a fair amount of debt and the opportunity to try and get into the housing market, for example. So it is a universal issue that you're dealing with. If you were coaching somebody else to do something innovative in a business, you're talking to one of your students, and they haven't got a job, they've got all this debt. How would you encourage them to move forward into an entrepreneurial world or a job world or a solution on the income side?
On the income side, yeah.
Yes.
And you are speaking to the budget, actually. And this is on my podcast, I always end with this part that a budget has two sides. It's got the income part and it's got the expenses part, right? So if you want to do well, you want to shrink the expenses or you want to increase the income. So let's talk about increasing the income. And this is not rocket science, Sharon. It's not something that's groundbreaking, that's out there. I always say, look inside. What do I have? You know, what skills do I have? What am I good at? What things come naturally to me that I can monetize now? And if you look around, you'll learn that there is so much. I'll make an example with my mom. My mom is great with people, right? And as a single parent, a teacher of note with what do you call it? With reach in the community, with a massive reach in community. She just thought, you know what? I'm not making enough. I'm a single parent. Let me start selling what do you call this, Tupperware and cosmetics product, your Justines, your Average Lanes, etc. Right? And personally, I thought I can't get employment. What can I do? I'm a CA. I'm also a coach. I can start a coaching practice. I coach people one-on-one. I pay them, or I knock on people's doors, companies, and say, this is what I do. This is what I can do. These are the services that I can render for your students or for your young professionals from a financial education's perspective. Give me the tender, you know, or you can, you are a student and you are great at maths. You know, lots and lots of people struggle with maths, right? You can be a tutor. I mean, and I make this example all the time. There is someone sitting in Vietnam who wants to learn how to speak English. Most of us in South Africa know how to speak English very well. You can just plug in your details on these online platforms and start teaching, you know, English to people who really want the skills for a couple of dollars, which will make a very big difference in rand terms. And yeah, I think just from the top of my head, those are some of the things that I encourage, you know, my clientele to do in terms of just increasing the top part of that budget.
We have got a few people suggesting you do go and speak to Treasury, because that was a very simple analysis of something they don't seem to get as well as they should.
Ever, yeah.
Thendo, thank you. That's very, very enlightening. And I just love the human side to the numbers that you bring, because they're not many in your profession that have the strength on both sides of the left and right brain. And you are unique in that respect. And you will go a long way in other aspects of business because of that. I think we will get all of these people to spend time with our young professionals group and sharing some of their ideas. But that is one really valuable one you can share. Kerryne. Now we have Erin and now we have Kerryne. Kerryne is a very unusual lady. She has a title I've not come across before. So she's not a Mrs. K or anything like that, because she could be Mrs. KK. You are the Chief Excitement Officer. This lady laughs the whole time. She's full of energy. She bubbles. She cannot sit still. You see, you've got me going. And she has spent 10 years being told something can't be done. And good South African style said, watch me. She ended up being waylaid on her journey by people who were selling her something that couldn't possibly ever work. But 10 years later of research and development, Kerryne has got, hold up for us, an amazing cosmetic product that is now going to be advancing into veterinary medical, burns, and all sorts of other wound healing applications. So here it's about looking good. She's keep trying to convince me I've got to get rid of my lines. So she's got the solution. She tells me it's going to be a lot less expensive than any other I've ever been offered. And she's actually made the technology work. And that is the innovation of a decade plus of effort. Kerryne, do you want to just show them what Ice Slices looks like and tell us a little bit about your hairy, audacious goals?
Awesome. Thanks, Sharon. And lovely to meet everyone on the panel. I've been so inspired by all of your stories and journeys. So I've thoroughly had fun this morning or this afternoon already. So before I show you what we have, I just wanted to start by saying that my journey of tenacity and endurance is proof that a globally unique technology can come out of a country like South Africa, and that you can start with nothing but a canoe, which is all I had when I first started this business. I had a canoe and nothing but debt. So I had debt I'd got myself into from a first business failure, and that's what I started with. And today we have a globally unique and patented Cryogel polymer technology. So I'll just give you a little demonstration. I'll just show you on my hand what that looks like. So it's a solid gel patch. It's a drug or dermal delivery system. It's water-based, and this little gel patch can encapsulate any active ingredients and release them into the skin. So the first, what led me onto the technology I didn't come out of a science background at all. So that's another point. You and
Portia come opposite ways around.
Yes, you can be a complete non-scientist and get into science and find your way in a very scientific field. I took science until Mrknee, and I went looking for a technology because I saw a gap in the market. And that's often where technologies go wrong, is technologies get delivered and then look for a gap. I saw a gap in the market for a kind of a high-tech cucumber slice. We call them ice slices. So this is just one of the many products. There was no lifestyle quick fix product that would treat puffiness, dark circles, tiredness, redness, and wrinkles all in one. And I decided I was going to be the person to develop this. And I didn't want a gimmick. I understood technology's ability to, number one, add value to the consumer, and secondly, differentiate yourself in the marketplace. And so there began that long 10-year arduous journey before we could even get a product to market. A lot of serendipity. It's a very long story. You can Google it. I think there's a lot on the net on it, but basically those 10 years I had to become the scientist. I had to figure out this technology that I had licensed. That was a very early stage laboratory experiment that didn't really work or have any method of manufacture around. And I decided to become the scientist and engineer and figure it all out. So it took 10 years, and we eventually developed the only cryogel manufacturing facility in the world. And we spanned the entire supply chain from R&D, manufacturing, product development, brand development, and export. So we've exported our products to various markets around the world. We're very lucky that almost from the outset, we started to export. I think America was the first market that came knocking on our door, because we had developed our brands with the end in mind. So we wanted to be a global brand, like your Coca-Cola of ice slices. And in order to stand head and shoulders next to the best brands in the world, you need to develop with the end in mind. So we went with the best kind of packaging and marketing materials and website, and the markets found us. And so we've been mostly through beauty salons and spas, distributed pharmacy chains, and even listings on some airlines, like we're currently on Emirates. We've been on Iceland Air and Virgin and a couple of others. And then there were some questions earlier on about funding. So I bootstrapped the business predominantly. So you're probably wondering how on earth I went from debt in a canoe to building manufacturing and developing brands. I was very lucky that between 2004 and 2006, there were a lot of government grants around to help historically disadvantaged individuals, which included women of all color. And I got a lot of government support. I bootstrapped the business. I did other jobs on the side, friends, fools, and family, they call it, utilizing every resource I could. That was for about 8 years. And then I even faced the dragons on Dragon's Den in Canada, but decided to take the IDC's funding, venture capital from their venture capital unit, and keep it local. And we recently won a grant award. We created a subsidiary company in the UK in order to help us globalize the business a little more easily. And through having a UK subsidiary, we recently won a Women in Innovation, a grant of £50,000 to enable us to go the journey to develop our technology, which always had its roots in burns and wounds. We've seen some amazing results on diabetic ulcers and the likes. And now this grant is helping us to take that project further into the medical industry. And that's the story in a nutshell.
One thing you shared with me, Kerryne, when we chatted last week,
Yes.
and that was the surprise reaction that the end customer had when they realized the company was South African.
Yes.
Please share that with us.
Yes.
I think we all need to respect and understand this is how
Yes.
the world sometimes sees us.
Mm.
And obviously you've got beyond that, but it must have been a major challenge.
It's really tough. Some questions have come through about what's the economy like at the moment. And, just doing business in South Africa with all our challenges and being South African and trying to globalize is a massive challenge. And the macro challenges on brand South Africa and how we perceived in the rest of the world, from corruption to crime and the likes, is really, really challenging. So we stood on international expos with our sassy packaging and our world-class technology, and people thought we came out of Europe or America or the likes. And the minute they discovered we were South African, a lot of our leads would grow cold. We would not get the business. They didn't want to transfer money that far. They thought there was going to be erratic supply from South Africa, that the service would be bad. There would be all sorts of trouble.
The equipment and the stuff didn't do what it said on the tin. That must have been a big challenge.
It was, and that's why setting up a UK subsidiary was one of our solutions to that. And that wasn't easy, really, really tough, because to get a VAT number, I think they even know my shoe size, and open a bank account. So that took about 3 years to just do. And we just started getting the traction. It did make a big difference. We started to attract bigger players in the market, more serious customers, and be taken a lot more seriously, I'm sad to say. And then COVID hit us, and the whole world stopped. So it definitely affected our momentum, but we definitely saw the benefits.
Well, the nice thing is you've got some degree of additional funding that's going to give you the export opportunity, and it's going to be wonderful to see that South African scientific leading edge technology being utilized globally and worldwide. So it's absolutely amazing. Lance Marshall has just put on something in terms of the Business Fit app at DRG, so it's one of our members. So there are lots of solutions that the Chamber can bring to yourselves as business people, as entrepreneurs, either to do what we're doing now, which is to share your story so people know who you are, but also to signpost you to potential solutions that might exist locally or internationally. There are 1 or 2 questions that have been answered already directly. So I'm going to now, at this point, ask each of you, you've got a minute or a fraction less that I can also say goodbye on time. If we could just go around the room, Portia, can you just share with us, would you do it again, what you've done? And if you did do something again, would it be the same or would it be different?
Yes, I would do it again, but this time around, I think I would be more cautious in terms of getting more understanding of what business is all about. So I think I would do more preparation in terms of understanding my market, in terms of understanding the business well before stepping out into business full time. Not overdo or not over prepare, but I think I would need to do that if I were to do it again. And also at the beginning of the business, I focus more on specific customers, whereas I should have been more wiser. I should have been able to, I think, spread the net wider instead of just focusing on specific customers for too long. So I would basically refine a few things around preparation, around the sales management, then I would do it again. And yeah, because it is fulfilling. It's tough, but it is fulfilling, and it is what I believe my purpose is in life.
Fantastic, Portia. Thank you. Erin, would you do it again? And if so, what would you do differently?
I'd certainly do it again, Sharon. I think I second pretty much everything that Portia has just mentioned there. There are some things that I would do slightly differently. And obviously to gain a better understanding of the market and what I was actually getting myself into. Specifically in the canned food industry, it's relatively a cutthroat industry to get into, controlled by conglomerate organizations. And so yeah, a couple of tips, a better understanding of the industry and the market would have been something I'd have liked to have spent slightly more time on. But yes, to answer your question, I certainly would do it again.
Fantastic. Thendo, you were right in the early days of your new financial coaching business. If you had to take your CA, US, UK, and future journey, would you do things differently now?
Not at all.
Mm-hmm. That was nice and quick.
I think my journey was carved out in ways that I would not, it's not a straight line, but I love the mess because it has sort of bred the person that I am today. But I think something that I have taken from this 18 months that I've been in this space for is just believing in me more. You know, it takes confidence to start. It takes confidence to say, Sharon, I don't know you from above, but this is what I do. I do feel that you have to know what I'm doing.
Yes,
so yeah, that confidence. Yes. So yeah, so not doubting yourself, because a lot of us, we're not going to build these wonderful businesses if we don't believe in self, you know. Yeah.
And that's believing in yourself, knowing you'll find the solution. Exactly. Work ethic, which is something South Africa can be so proud of as a nation, is our work ethic. When we do get off our derrieres and we do make that effort and we get engaged and we see the fruits of what we do, it is such a wonderful journey of self-empowerment, but also through the fact you're empowering so many others at the same time.
Definitely.
Kerryne, you've been on it the longest out of everyone here.
Well,
you don't look it because of your eye slices, but you have technically been at it longer than everyone.
I promise you, if you cut me, I don't bleed anymore. There's a layer of steel underneath this. But all I can say is I'm glad I didn't know what the journey was going to be, because I'm not sure I would have embarked on it. It's been tougher, but it's also been than I ever thought, but it's also been the most exhilarating journey. And like Erin said, I think Portia said, it's my purpose in life. So all I want to say to folk is just start. You don't need to know it all. You can figure it out along the way. We all did that. Just start and take it a step at a time, a day at a time, and figure it out as you go along. And you'll get there. You'll get there with perseverance.
We've had some wonderful feedback on the chat, which everybody's had an opportunity to read. And the comment, Thendo, you made a moment ago, I feel you have to know what I'm doing, I think might just be the phrase of the day. The second one I would say I would support is Kerryne's is, don't over-engineer it, just get out there and do it. Because if I knew what I was about to face as a South African starting out 40 odd years ago, I probably would have run away and gone back into the corporate world very, very quickly. I didn't. And it is a tough journey. And I have to say, I join all of you on innovation, toughness, needing agility, needing resilience, needing to believe in yourselves, all the things that we have shared today. It is so critically important. There was something else about time management, which is really important, and also the energy, the silver lining. that all four of you have brought to every equation that you have dealt with is something all of us are going to take away with us today. So I'd like to say thank you to all four of you. Really, really fantastic. And if you all look out for the next newsletter from the Chamber, you will have calls to action from all four of the panelists who will tell you a bit more about how you can get hold of them, as well as if you were quick enough and you picked it up on the chat, you've also had that opportunity as well. So thank you very much to everybody, and to my panel. You've been inspiring. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you all.